it's your girl Nancy Red, and this is Season 3 of Mompreneurs, where every week we celebrate beautiful Black mothers who are simultaneously killing it as amazing business moguls and awesome moms, listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. Now, there are many types of businesses that moms can start, as we see here every week, and I'm obsessed with the one that my next guest has built literally from the ground up, in part because it's helped me so much with my own children. For over a decade, attorney Carol Sutton Lewis has been slowly and methodically building Ground Control Parenting, which is her multifaceted brand that's designed to support and inspire parents of Black and brown children with the tools and the support that we all need to help our children soar. Now, she's also the creator and host of the award-winning podcast of the same name, Ground Control Parenting, where over 5 seasons, she has created this incredible hive mind of wisdom from all these different parents from incredible walks of life. And I'm so happy that she's here on my podcast with me today. Yay! Welcome, Carol.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I am so happy to be here. Really thrilled. Lovely to see you and lovely to be here.
Well, I have to laugh because you've known me since I had very tiny babies. Now I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. And if there's one thing I wasn't in the position to do when I first started talking with you is have a podcast about anything. Rather less having multiple facets of motherhood because it's hard.
Yes. Well, it's hard, but we can do hard things. So, and we do. So it's hard, but it's worth doing. So yeah, I can't believe your kids are as old as they are. Oh, wow. You know how you freeze children in small ages and then you just don't acknowledge that they grow older. But yeah, well,
I'm very aware of that.
My 3 are, get ready, 32, 28, and 24. Ooh. I mean, I feel like...
I don't know that happens.
I know. I feel like I am one of those ages. So it's, although I am certainly not, it is sort of hard to believe that so much time has passed.
But in spirit, we all are, aren't we? And actually, I'm so glad you brought up your 3 wonderful children, because before we get into your mompreneurship, I want to talk a little bit about who makes you a mom. Let's talk about your household. You just got to brag on your babies and your man and your whole situation because it is delightful.
Well, I'm thrilled to do this. And I'm real thrilled to do it because I'm talking about them, not about me. And so my oldest is my daughter and she's 32 and I have 2 sons after that. They are, I am so much of the grown and flown generation of parents. And so what's so interesting about this, I'll talk about them in a second, but the interesting thing about this phase of parenting is you really get the opportunity to see your children as independent, grown folk adults. I mean, and there's an upside and a downside to that. The upside is that if you like them, and I do like them all, I mean, it's so much fun. The downside is that when you're parenting, even a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, you have a vague recollection of what you were doing at 10 and 12, but you don't have precise memory. I mean, you just remember some stuff that happened. Okay, I remember very clearly what I was doing at each of their ages. And the bad part about that is the temptation to sort of project my sensibility on what they're doing is tough to hold back. But what are they doing? My oldest is a filmmaker. She's COO of a film production company, and living the life that I would love. I mean, she's really enjoying her work on the business end of film production. Next one is in venture capital. He's living in LA. He's out there with you guys in LA, living that LA life and really enjoying himself. And the baby, just a quick aside, in parenting, I have to talk about the need to pivot, and for parents need to pivot in the direction their children are going, even if they hadn't anticipated that. Well, Drew is my pivot baby because he, after his, junior year in college, he decided that what he really wanted to do, he didn't want to go to the investment bank that he'd been working with over the summers. He really wanted to become a Marine. And so, surprise, plot twist. And, and we all, after a moment of sort of stunned silence, we all embraced it wholeheartedly. And so he is in Japan he was deployed to Japan, and he is serving out. He is now a first lieutenant in the U.S. Marine Corps. So that's what the three babies are doing.
So you were a lawyer
Mm-hmm.
and you ended up being at home a lot more with your children
Mm-hmm.
and figuring the whole thing out from scratch. You knew how to be a lawyer, but you didn't exactly know how to be a mom.
This is true. And some might say, I mean, I was a lawyer for a very brief period of time, but I went from lawyering into the entertainment business. And what I knew how to be was someone who was really career focused. And I certainly thought of myself then as someone who was going to continue to be outside of the home work focused. So it was a real awakening when I started to have children and discovered that for a myriad of different reasons, I ended up really wanting to focus more on their development and actually enjoying the time that I was spending with them, such that it didn't make as much sense as I thought it would for me to keep barreling ahead in the workforce, the outside workforce, when there was a lot for me to do with the kids at home. And I kid you not, Nancy, I would have been highly offended, and I'm sorry for the listening audience, but I have to say this, if you had told me when I was in college that you're going to be a stay-at-home mom. No disrespect, I just did not see that for me. And here I am. So again, talking about pivots, you just never know.
You never know. So here you are, and you still though have a spirit, right? So it
Hmm.
wasn't like you went into motherhood saying, I'm going to start a business around parenting. This was a really organic process that was a slow burn from the time
Hmm.
they were very little children.
Hmm. So it began with me wanting to do research for my own edification, to get smarter about parenting, particularly parenting boys. I grew up with I had a wonderful family and two older brothers, and my parents were loving and smart. But I could see even when I was growing up that they were much better at parenting me, the youngest, who was cooperative and loved school and adopted their perspective that education was key, and my brother, who was an artist and really just wanted to draw and didn't love school. So I could see from even before I even thought about having children that people who are smart, good, loving people could just um, have parenting misjudgments that can impact their children. And so when I started having children, I really wanted to be sure that, particularly of boys, I really wanted to be sure that I was learning all that I could about parenting boys. And again, no disrespect to my amazing parents, but really trying to see if I could follow their pathway to some extent, but deviate a little so that I could make room for the boy child that I had, to be his full self and embrace that. So I started out just really trying to do this for myself. And the more I got into it, and the more I started sort of discovering a lot of programs and information and resources, and I was applying what I learned. And then the kids were getting older, and I realized that so many of my colleagues, so many of my peers who were hard at work, nose to the grindstone, really killing it at work and managing these great families, they did not have the time to focus on all these things. I didn't have the time to do the research, and all the stuff that I was coming up with was really helpful, not just to me. I mean, who knew there was a museum of math in New York City unless you went looking for it? And so when I found it, I was like, let me just let my friends know, all the fun things they could do. I mean, everything from reading to math literacy, just all these things that I was learning that I wanted to share. So I figured the best way to do that was through a blog. And that's how I
A
got
mommy
started.
blog.
A mommy blog, lots of years ago, a mommy blog. And it really wasn't done with an eye. I mean, I'm an English major. I'm an old English major, but I'm an English major, and I love to write. So it was natural to me to start to want to write, a blog. It really didn't, move into the business arena until it got, well, frankly, actually, until I started having more and more opportunities to share the information. I was called upon to do some talks, and people would start looking to me for information. And then I realized that I could teach this. I mean, I had enough, I had enough information, and I had amassed a large enough network of people who know a lot more about things than I did, that I could call on them to help me teach things. So I actually started in late 2019, I started teaching parenting as a course at Hunter College's continuing education course. I designed a course and I taught it. And that was when I first began to think of this as an actual business, because I had to channel my mother, who was a school teacher. I had to channel her lesson plans and figure out how to market it and promote it. And the school, Hunter provided the space, but I had to get all the people and get them to pay to take the course. So that was my crash course in viewing this as a business. And then 2020 began. And then, even before the pandemic hit, in early 2020, I began to think about how much time and effort I was putting into these lesson plans. It was a lot of work. And, it was a lot of work. And I had, my classes were like 30 people, 35 people, and I could only do a couple a week, and it was a lot to promote them. And I thought, maybe if I do this new podcast thing, maybe I could just do the work and then just spread it out to more people. So, and then sort of weirdly, serendipitously, and one rarely uses that word along with a podcast, but I mean, along with the pandemic, but serendipitously, I had to stay in my house for a very long time. And it made reaching people a lot easier. I mean, I basically initially called on my friends. And as I alluded to earlier, I have a lot of friends that are just killing it, doing amazing things. And then they were all doing amazing things from their home. And so I got them to get on the computer with me and talk about parenting. So then it began to feel more like a business.
And it's such an important space, because boys, like, that's how we became close. Like, I have a boy, he is 12 years old, and your successful boys were inspirations for me in the hard times, and your succinct and concise and jugular cut-in advice is so helpful because you've been there and you have the t-shirt, right? And it's interesting for you lived it, you lived through it, you've lived through the pivots, you have all this information. And you still were a mom, though. And I think it's interesting when you say 2019, that seems to coincide with somebody's graduation, right? Like, at what point did you say, I can turn my knowledge, my canonical knowledge, into an actual business? Like, was it at what point did you feel like your children were flying the coop enough? Because they're never completely flown; they always return. But at what point did they seem to be flapping their wings strong enough for you to say, I can do this?
Well, that is a very good question, Nancy. And for me, it was not the sort of expected time. Like, they were all, I think the last one graduated from college. Well, actually, the last one graduated from college in 2021. But anyone who has more than one child knows that when you have multiple children, the last one always gets kind of swept up with the rest of them. So I wasn't as keen on having to sort of stay at home and stare at him. So I could
That's why he went to the Marines. He was like, I don't need
this. Yeah, I'm sure. So I'd been doing the blog for quite some time. And I should also say that for somebody who was, quote, stay at home, I did a lot of stuff that didn't keep me at home. I mean, I was focused on the kids, but I've done a lot of nonprofit work. I've served on a lot of boards. I've served on boards in my two institutions, my undergrad and the law school. I'm still on the law school board. I really, I grew up in a household with parents who did a lot of nonprofit work, and to whom much is given, much is expected. And they always wanted to make sure that my parents were always telling me it was important to give back. And so I've done a lot. So it wasn't as if I spent the children's formative years just sort of focusing on them and then, suddenly had nothing to do. So life was very busy even after they were all launched. And to your point, they're never launched. There's another podcast episode on parenting grown children, but that's, but they were certainly away enough. I could have moved more into the realm that I am in now, earlier, had I, not been as busy with so many of the other things. And frankly, and I don't think I've said this out loud, but frankly, before, I wasn't 100% sure that when I had this empty nest and when I had when I was contemplating the next chapter, and I want to talk about chapters in a minute, but when I was contemplating my next chapter, I had to pause a moment to determine whether I wanted to start my next chapter with the same kind of work that I had been doing both outside of the home in my blog and the podcast, but with the kids. I mean, I've been parenting for a long time. And so did I want to make my next chapter more parenting? And it took me a minute. I mean, I thought about it because I trained as a lawyer. There are lots of other things I'm interested in. And after thinking about it, I concluded that, yeah, I did for a number of reasons. First of all, it's a passion. I mean, and I don't mean to sound cliche, like, my children, I mean, I love them to death, but the passion grew of being able to ask questions about parenting, which is such an amorphous and weirdly hard to pin down topic and job. To be able to articulate the questions, find the answers, find some experts, gather enough information to make me feel like a very confident parent. And the one thing that I felt throughout raising these children, I didn't feel like I was doing it right all the time, but I always felt really confident that if I'm making a mistake, I'm going to figure it out pretty soon. Then I'm going to figure out what I do to fix the mistake. And so that sort of passion for the subject and the kind of also the novelty of the concept in terms of a business concept, because, you look at like what's one of the basic things you do as an entrepreneur is like, who's your competition? And because my focus was, initially it was boys, because I was very focused on boys. I expanded it a few years after beginning to girls, but it was children, Black and brown children. And my approach was not, it was to talk to parents more so than my focus was not as much on specific stages of development for the children, but the impact on the parents of the stages of development. I wrote a lot about sort of as the world would throw us one horrible curveball after another, I would always write like how to talk to your children about this terrible massacre or this terrible circumstance. I always wanted to look at it from the parent's perspective. And when I looked out at the arena of parenting books and information, I found that there was a bit of a space for that, because a lot of mom blogs focused on either very focused on the child development or the fabulous mom development, like how you stay fabulous as a mom, or sort of and this is not, I don't say this negatively at all, but the communal hand wringing element where everyone just finds community in being concerned about how hard things are and sort of jokingly and sometimes not so jokingly moaning and groaning about the vagaries of parenting, which are real. So anyway, I wasn't doing any of that. And so backing up, the passion.
Right there, it's what is the best things about what you do is it's right there in the middle. You empathize, but you're results focused, which is a very helpful thing. And it also brings a very specific audience, like people who we recognize the problems. The solutions are hard, but the only way you're going to get the solutions and the answers you want is, like you said earlier, by doing hard things.
Yeah. And one of the things about parenting, you often don't even know what the hard things you have to do are. And my biggest concern when I think about what I want for parents is I want, again, that confidence. I want parents to feel like they're truly doing the best they can. I mean, people always say, well, I did the best I could. But I mean, but one of the ways you do that is
you?
right.
How do you know?
Right. Exactly.
How do you know
exactly. Yeah.
What are your metrics?
Exactly. They feel like they did the best they could.
But feelings don't get results. You need to actually have a game plan.
No,
but you can't have a game plan. My brother always says, and that's one of the reasons I love this podcast and why it's important that we do things like this. We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
And and especially for Black people, the game plan was purposely hidden from us. We did not get the instruction manual. So we're over here cobbling together, robbing Peter to pay Paul to figure this all out. So if you don't know what the metrics are, if you don't know what you're supposed to accomplish, then you can't go as high as you can go, or you can't be as content as you can be. And I think that's what you do so well.
Oh, well, thank you. One of the things that I really want to focus on is how parents are doing themselves. I mean, you talk about as Black people, God knows, we, as a people, we have had more than our share of trauma historically, and we all everything that we've learned about survival has been sort of in the United States, has been under a cloud of people conspiring to hide some of the information. I mean, so we come into this, I'm talking about previous generations, but with each generation, we still carry a little bit of that. It's going to be harder for us. It's going to be, we're going to have a harder time. And what I want to change the conversation towards a little in terms of thinking about parenting, it's not just sort of what should you do in any given circumstance with your child, but how are you approaching this problem? What do you carry with you as a parent that impacts everything you do with your kids? Who are you? And then how does that impact how you parent? And I mean, it's not to send parents into some deep psychological tailspin. It's more to help you understand how you view things so that you can sort of stop yourself if you, so let's say, for example, I'll give you my example. I was triggered for who knows what reason by slamming doors. If any child slammed a door, I'd lose my patience no matter what. I mean, I would have an overreaction to a slamming door. And I realized that because I would feel like my blood boil, and I actually decided to own it and talk to my children about it. And I would say, listen, when you slam the door, I can't hear anything else. That's all I hear. And we can't have a conversation. I'm going to become unreasonably angry. So you have to understand, you can't slam the door because that's going to end our ability to communicate about whatever it is that we don't agree. I didn't say it quite so eloquently, but that was that's the idea.
This is the one of my other, Michelle Richburg said there's oh goodness, it's so funny. It's just like there's the hidden stuff behind what we're saying. But that's the gist.
It came out,
that's
and she got the gist of it. I cleaned it up for you. But my point is, as parents, we have to know aside from knowing like the good parenting things to do, we also have to know what we carry with us from our parenting, from the way that we were parented, from our circumstances, the things that are red lines for us. And then we have to acknowledge whether they're reasonable red lines or not. I mean, you certainly don't want your child hauling off and knocking you down. I mean, I think everybody has their own red lines that might not be as obvious, and you have to kind of own them and manage them. It's so, and when you are able to do that, after I had that conversation with my daughter, I felt better. Now, because if she slammed the door again, I would remember the conversation and remember that I was overreacting, so I wouldn't get so hyped. But I would remind her that we had a deal that I said, you can close the door and you can punch the pillows and you can call me anything you want to call. You have a right to be angry for sure. But in this household with this mother, the slamming of the door is going to be something that I am not going to be able to tolerate. Another one, just another example, a lot of parents that I kind of grew up with here would say sort of laughingly, oh, my child just said, I hate you. I know they don't really hate me, but no, no, I wasn't ready to hear that. And so you just have to draw lines. But the point is, you have to know who you are, and you have to put how you are in the context of parenting. And sometimes you have to stop being the way that you are a little bit to be a better parent, but you have to know it first. So part of my mission, and this is why I do the podcast a lot, is to talk to parents about how they were parented, first of all, how that impacted their parenting, secondly, and then how they cope with various things, because there's no magic formula and there's no one path for everyone to follow. But I do hope that parents can be inspired to build their own parenting strengths on the kind of information I'm able to provide.
And I love that, because you're providing this from a perspective of having been there, done that. I know what it was. Michelle Richburg said there's a blurry in the sturry. But what you do is you kind of bring things into focus, because it's hard for us to see the situation. We're so mired in it, we're exhausted, it's personal. And what ground control parenting does really well is it depersonalizes it while not giving the excuse of, while saying do hard things. Like you do
Mm-hmm.
hard things all the time. You've even run the New York City Marathon. You've done all of these different things.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also, like me, not been perfect. And like me, you're really big into mentorship. And one of my favorite things with my mentors, I'm just like, look, I want to tell you all the things I did wrong because I want you to do them because that's how you're going to succeed at a faster rate than me
Mm-hmm.
because you're
Mm-hmm.
just like, for example, from our experience, whenever friends talk to me about New York City private schools and the application process, I said, when was your child born? Don't be like me. Don't waste thousands of dollars in applications if you have a summer boy. So that's a
Mm-hmm.
different thing. And so they don't waste all that time. They know
Mm-hmm.
exactly
Mm-hmm.
what to do versus
Mm-hmm.
me who didn't come to you soon enough.
Well, that's another aspect of why I really want to do this work because, we can say it so many times. You don't know what you don't know. And when you come to a city like New York or Los Angeles or any major city or any place where there's competition for anything with your children, and you could live in the city your whole life and be completely clueless about this part of life because you don't have a kid. But once you have a child, two things happen. You realize, or maybe you're made to realize ultimately that there are all these sort of deadlines that you didn't know about. That's the one thing. And the other thing is that there is this host of people that are all too happy to tell you what you're not doing right already. I mean, so you have two pressures, the realization that in fact there are some things that you could be doing, but also this weird pressure of everyone who is maybe 1 or 2 years ahead of you kind of just either trying to give you helpful advice as to what they did or just making you feel bad because you haven't done it yet. So I really wanted to take in New York City here that it's pretty bad. I mean, that it happens. There's a lot of competition
Well,
for
it's bad
schools
everywhere
and
now. I would like to say that I'm in Los Angeles, it's terrible. New York City is bad, but also all across America. Parents are seeing fewer slots, fewer opportunities, more time constraints, more expense to
mm-hmm,
do
mm-hmm.
anything, which in a very stressful way makes it worse because the inability to persevere becomes more of a challenge, and what you're doing is giving perseverance tools. Essentially you're
Mm-hmm,
like just
mm-hmm.
like it's essentially one giant ball of big girl panties or big or or big boy panties when it comes to this parenting, because that's what you need some panties that are big. And would you disagree? Are there lies
No.
detected?
No. I will, yes, I will definitely agree that there is, yeah. And it's interesting. It crosses, the perseverance is key. It crosses economic spectrum, even here in New York. When one of the things that was really, and I didn't mention this before, but it occurs to me that one of the things that really shaped my passion about this and my interest in disseminating this information was the 10 years that I spent in a parenting group. We were together. We would meet for lunch on Tuesdays at a friend's house. And we met with a woman who ran the toddler center that all of us had children in at one point or another. We weren't at the center together, but she had gathered this group. And we'd spend lunch hour talking about, basically, it was a big mea culpa. Like, oh, I did this last week. Oh my gosh, have I ruined my child? Like, oh, this is the big mistake I made. Oh, I have no idea what to do with this. And, and it was kind of a group therapy kind of thing. And then we'd have the child psychologist that ran the program who would kind of sweep in with some talk that was some evidence-based some contributions. But what I learned from that group, apart from how interesting it was to have your problems socialized, and I mean, and because many of the women in that group were very well resourced, it was such a great education for me, because I learned that, first of all, no matter what your resources are, parenting is a great equalizer, because no matter how much money, when you have a lot of money, yes, it makes, it doesn't make parenting easier in the sense of your ability to relate to your child. What it does do, and what it can do, is give you the sense of entitlement to an answer. You have enough resources, so you keep going for an answer. If this doesn't work, you try this. And if you have a lot of money, then resources don't prohibit you doing all this tracking of different things. But when I was in that group and I thought, this entitlement to an answer, you can decouple that from the money. Because if you can just take the position of, I'm going to just keep attacking this problem until I can figure out a solution. If this doesn't work, let me try this. If my kid's in school and they're not getting along with their schoolmate, and I've tried talking to the teacher and talking to the parent, talking to their family, let me try some other things. Let me not give up. And that lesson of perseverance, like, hard things require perseverance. You've got to just keep at it, and you have to be creative about how you think about things. I always say this, but people back when I was early days, had the kids were little, and my husband was this very successful guy in business, and I would go to these events where I would be the plus one, and I'd sit between these two titans of industry, and they'd ask me what I did, and I would say something. I couldn't bring myself to say stay-at-home mom, no disrespect, but I just wasn't there. And I would say something, and they could easily see that I was spending a lot of time with my kids, and they'd say, oh, but it's the most important job in the world. And I could just hear the collective rolling of eyes. And it used to annoy me because I could tell it was so not sincere, but it truly is a job. And part of the reason I do this work is because I say it's a job. It's an important job in the sense that it's the job of preparing our future, our children's future. We're creating the people that are going to be in the world and change the world. And if it is a job, why aren't we taking it more seriously in the sense of why aren't we treating it like a job? Like we're not preparing for it. We're not researching it. We're not, if you're in a job and something goes wrong at the job, you don't give up and say, well, I did the best I could. Particularly if you're an entrepreneur, you don't just say, okay, I guess that didn't work. You really, the perseverance to try to get to where you want to go is a muscle that I really want to try to help parents to further develop.
And it's a muscle you have. That's why you started Ground Control Parenting, your business. You're no longer a stay-at-home mom. You are killing it out here, helping other people come up with their parenting business game plan. and it's really working. And it's really, one sec. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I appreciate that. Interestingly, Nancy, before, when you asked me to be on this program, I thought, oh, here's a twist. Entrepreneur, I honestly haven't really thought about myself as an entrepreneur, but truth be told, when I broke it down, I definitely have a business. I have sponsors. I market, I promote. Yes, and the funny thing is that I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My parents, my father in particular, left his law practice to join forces with his brother to go into business, go into the media business. And until thinking about this title of this show, I never envisioned myself as following in their footsteps. I didn't join their business, but yeah, I guess I am carrying on that entrepreneurial spirit.
You are. And what was the business that they left their practice to go start?
Oh, they started a media company business. They owned radio stations. They owned the Apollo at one point, the Apollo Theater. They owned newspapers. So, and it was such a great, it was a great experience for them. They really loved it. And it afforded me opportunities to be behind the scenes at some fun concerts when I was younger. So I reaped the benefits of them being in the entertainment business.
Well, it also afforded your whole family the opportunity of seeing what benefits come from taking a little risk. And we see it come out in so many different ways. Your daughter following in their footsteps in the media entertainment industry. Your son saying, I'm eschewing venture capitalism. I'm going to be a Marine for now.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. If I often say, because my kids, I didn't say this earlier, but they all have really stellar educations. They've been, the two of them graduated from Harvard undergrad, the other one graduated from UPenn. Two of them are Harvard Business School graduates. They have stellar educations, and I'm very proud of them for that. But if you had said to me, if you had a crystal ball when they were 10, what would that be? 10 and 3 and 5. I can't even do the math, but 3, 7, and 10. That's how old they would have been. If you had said, okay, one's going to be a filmmaker, one's going to be a venture capitalist in cannabis, which is my son's business, the cannabis business, and the other one's going to be a Marine, I would have been like, Not exactly what I was thinking, but they checked all of my boxes. They checked my education boxes, and they are such good people, she says, bragging, but they really are. So I can't ask for more than that. And that's the pivoting thing. You got to just, you pour all you can in, and that when you feel as if you have done the best you can with pouring it all in, and then you just got to let them go and fly.
Well, and to the point we were making earlier about resources, and my family's always said resources insulate from a lot of life problems, right? It doesn't make them easier or better. Well, it can't make them easier, but what I'm saying is you can persevere with resources. Your family's entrepreneurship really helped with the resources aspect of this, right? And so it creates generational comfort and capacity and ability to take these risks. And that's what this podcast is all about. And that's why it's really great to see you continue this, even though you don't think of yourself initially as an entrepreneur. This actually happens a lot. People come on, they're like, oh, wait, this is because women in particular also tend to just think of it as a side hobby or like something fun or a passion project. But this is entrepreneurial, and you have some really big milestones that you've accomplished that many businesses don't. What is one of the milestones that Ground Control Parenting has accomplished that you're especially proud of?
Well, I am very proud that we are award winning. And I didn't realize when I won the award for Best Educational Podcast that was as big a deal, because I you make a submission and you win. But now that I see that there's so many podcasts out here, and it was very, very, very gratifying to have an independent jury of people listen to my work and give us the award. I've also done a second podcast that it doesn't have to do with. By virtue of this work, I got another job in podcasting. I am the co-host of a podcast called Lost Women of Science, and it's a wonderful, it's a departure from parenting, but it talks about women scientists whose work has gone unheralded. And the episode that I produced won a podcast award. So I feel like one of the things that has been great, and one of the things that you don't often get when you are just doing the momming part of the mompreneur, is the validation that you're actually doing good work beyond, this little, when you are being acknowledged outside of your home for doing good work. One of the other things I just wanted to mention about the road to entrepreneurship, or my road to entrepreneurship, is that I mentioned earlier about the chapters of life. I think that many moms, women in general, but moms particularly, would do well to think about their life in chapters. And there's the obvious, children are gone and then you can do something part. But you find, because we have to compartmentalize so many different things in our lives when we're working, whether we're working at an outside office or nonprofit stuff, our lives are so compartmentalized. We often get frustrated that we're not doing it all, and some of our dreams are not being realized. But if you look at your life at chapters, like I am now that I dove into this, I dove in head first. Post-pandemic, I was doing a lot of podcasts. I was picked up by iHeartRadio, and I had so many more podcasts that I had to do. And it was really, really, I was working really hard. And it really felt like I was in a new chapter of life. I mean, I really felt as if now I get to go all in. I mean, I really get to go all in. And then, as time goes on, I will consider the next chapter where I'll determine, and it's great because you get to having an entrepreneurial spirit, you get to do it the way you want to do it. So you work really hard, and all entrepreneurs really have to, you grind, but then you get to decide, do I want to keep doing this? What is my next chapter? Like what's the next act? Because certainly coming from my perspective, because I am an older mom now, the runway is not endless, and I don't mean to be maudlin, but you really have to look at it in terms of you can turn the page from whatever it is that you were doing, and you can start a new chapter. And so there's opportunities for entrepreneurship for mothers everywhere.
Love that. And regarding the opportunities, what is your advice to somehow in the chaos of motherhood for mothers who do want to use their incredible talents, their specific gifts to help their communities, to start a business? What is your advice to them?
The first thing I would do would plan. The planning is really important. And the first thing you really need to do is sit down and be honest with yourself about what time you have, what you are doing with the time that you have, how efficient you are being with the time that you have, and what you want to do. How much time do you have to devote to what you really want to do? Because, it's kind of easy to dream, and it's tempting to look around or look on Instagram and see all these people that are just, killing it, or look like they're killing it anyway. And to dive in, but to dive in. And before you dive in, you really have to assess two different things. First of all, how much time you have. I mean, and not with an eye towards, I don't have enough time, but literally, like, how much time you have, like, and what is your day like? And if you're going to carve out time to focus on something that you're passionate about, or something that you see a hole that you want to fill, or you have some entrepreneurial idea, what part of your day are you going to devote to this? I have friends who are writers who talk about getting up at 5 a.m. and writing. I've never been able to do that successfully. Oh, is that you?
I mean, only, unfortunately, but that's another can of worms. Right.
Yes.
But you make the time for the, my family always says, Nance, you do the things you want to do. If you want to do it, you always make time for it. If you don't want to do it, you won't. That's just who you are.
It's true. I think that's how, actually, truth be told, how most people are. You end up doing the things you want to do. And for those listening who feel like, I'm not doing anything that I want to do, I don't mean to depress you, but you can make the time for the things that you want to do. But you need the fire in the belly to make you do the thing that you might not want to do to get to where you want to go. For example, to get up 2 hours earlier to do something. Most people would not voluntarily get up when it's still dark outside and try to do work. I mean, when it still feels like the middle of the night. But if your plan is such that you've fleshed out your idea, you have looked very carefully about the time you might have, and then you have to get creative with your resources. I mean, and I don't mean just monetary resources. I mean, say one of the sticking points is that you don't have childcare, or you're too busy with the kids when they're home and you can't get away from them. You can engage friendly neighbors, fellow moms, trade off a day. I mean, make a plan so that one day a week somebody grabs them all and does something with them, so you get that time. I mean, it is, the fire in the belly is very important, because it's the thing that's going to get you up early, and it's the thing that's going to help you think creatively and not give in to the no's. Being an entrepreneur means you hear a lot of no's. There are a lot of no's. You got to get comfortable with the no. That's not going to work, or you're crazy, or why are you even bothering? I mean, you need to feel as confident as you can about what you want to do. But look, there's so much inspiration around. I mean, Nancy, the people you have on your podcast, I mean, there's so many inspirational figures in the world now that have done it, that have figured it out. And you can, I mean, it's hard, but it's not impossible. We can do hard things.
We can do hard things. And I love that. It's hard, it's not impossible. We can find the time. And I'm so glad that you found the time to talk with me. Okay, but before you go, I have one last segment. It's my favorite segment. It's called Mompreneurs Manifestation, where I always ask each guest, what is next for you, or what are you hoping is next for you? What are you hoping to grow or to come in the upcoming year? And how can we help to manifest this endeavor?
Oh, that is a very, very good question, and one I really appreciate. So I have two answers to that. In the immediate short term, what I would love for ground control parenting is for it to become more of an interactive, community engaged space. I have spent a lot of time talking with parents about issues, and I now have done a little bit more talking with groups of parents. I mean, remember, this started in the pandemic, so only recent years I've been able to actually face-to-face talk with parents. What I love the most about this work is talking to people and hearing the things they're concerned about, and the wheels are spinning in my mind as to how I can get the experts around me or find the experts to help them with problems. I don't have all the answers, but I know where to find a lot of them. And so what I would love for the business to grow into is one where there's a lot more engagement. I'm on Instagram. I am on as Ground Control Parenting. I'm also on as Carol Sutton Lewis. I have not a love hate. I have a difficult relationship with Instagram because I am not as inclined to sort of post a lot, but I will post more and more if I can talk to people about, and I shouldn't say it that way. I do want you to follow me on Instagram, and as Ground Control Parenting, I regularly post, but I love when I read on Instagram, there's a give and take between the people who are doing the posting and the people that are responding. So that is the short term. I'd love to become, and actually I'm rolling out, I'm mid-season, I'm in between seasons now. I'm producing the next season, but in August, we'll be rolling out a platform that's more visual and that will hopefully foster more engagement. So everyone hopefully can look out for that. Longer term, I would love to collect so much of the information and many of the really valuable perspectives that I've heard in the course of the podcasts that I've done into a book of parenting principles because I talk to a lot of people and I hear some just rise to the top, some of the same principles over and over. And I'd love to be able to put them all together and sort of sprinkle them with some of the really great information I've gotten from some of the guests in my research and make a real live book and put it on the shelf, a really hardcover, old school, put it on the shelf, go to a library book.
I love how you say old school as the books don't exist. Like, oh, back in my day, like there was this thing with trees in it. I've been after you for a book for a long time. So I'm always here. My door is open to help you. And our hearts are open and very grateful that you took the time to speak with us today.
My absolute pleasure, Nancy. Always good to speak with you, and especially good to speak with you on this subject. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really important, and I know everyone appreciates it as I do.
Oh, thank you. Okay, everyone, that was Carol Sutton Lewis, the beautiful and brilliant attorney and mother of three behind Ground Control Parenting. She's already told you where you can find her at groundcontrolparenting.com or everywhere on social media. And we really appreciate you listening to Carol and watching us and listening to Mompreneurs. Just a reminder, a brand new episode will go live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit urban1podcast.com for more. That's urban1podcasts.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.